Been practicing this in the backyard at home and still haven't managed to get one going even with a piece of tissue. Killer. It's a good thing I always come extra prepared. G'day guys, Nathan from Lost in the Trek. It's been an absolute frantic setup trying to get everything organised for today. Managed to get myself some food cooking for the night. I wanted to get that on early because it's going to be a stew, so trying to slow cook it, but at the moment I had to fight getting that fire started, and then also have to fight getting my hoochie up and setting up a camp for the night. So now that I'm set up, I'm going to go for a walk down to the river, and hopefully we can find something down there that'll be interesting for you guys to see. So this area that I'm in is known as a gold producing district, so I'm on the Turon River. So what I'm hoping today is that I've got camp set up now. I can get down. I've only got probably another hour or so of light, or good light, that I can get down there and find a little speck of gold to show you guys. Don't know if you can see it, but there's just a couple of geese down here. They look pretty cool. Try and get close enough so you can see them. So this area, the Turon, back probably about 170 years ago, was a real hot spot for gold in the area. Got a few animals going off at the same time. We've got some goats over there just running up the hill. Just had the geese go off, and then now the apostle birds as well. So 170 years ago, this area here would have been full of people trying to find gold. Now, all this area here would have been producing gold. Bathurst and all the region was well known for producing gold. So what ended up happening with the gold came bushrangers, and none was more famous than Ben Hall throughout this region. He was known to frequent through here, out to Forbes, and then also out to Dubbo. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about Hall's gang, but first I'm going to have a bit of a pan myself and see if I can find anything. Nothing in that pan, but you'd have to be pretty lucky for your first dig on a hole to actually get something there. So I've probably got about 2 more pans before the light goes, and then it's just going to be no good here. So I'll give it a crack. I've just opened up this little hole here, dug down and managed to find some clay, moved all the big rocks out of the way. So I'm hoping that I might be able to get a little bit there and get a little bit closer to the bedrock. All right, let's go check out how that pan went. You're probably not going to see much on a GoPro and in this light, but there's 2 tiny specks. Tiny speck here, and a tiny speck just here. Nothing on that last pan, so just going to head back to camp now, see how dinner's going. So just walking back, as you may have been able to tell, I've got no experience whatsoever in getting gold. Come down a couple of times, given it a try with the kids, but I'd probably say don't trust your gold prospecting with someone who goes down and does it in Crocs and with a tiny Bunnings shovel. You could just imagine though, like that was about an hour's worth of work and I found 3 specks. You imagine 170 years ago putting in all that effort during the day only for yourself to walk with your loot around a corner, suddenly a gang of bushrangers is there to come and take what you've just earned. Been looking forward to this meal all day, so just finished cooking up. Everything's cooked pretty much perfect. It's all ready to fall apart. So what I did was I've cooked up a beef stew with a bit of tomato, beef stock, some rosemary, a couple of other ingredients, and threw it all in. And then throughout the day I've just had it sitting on top of the fire, just hanging above so it continually simmers. Been touch and go throughout the day. Sometimes the fire's gone out, I've had to go and fix it. Other times it's been too hard and I've had to go and find some fresh water to tip into the stock so it doesn't all burn. But I'll show you the end result. Beef, potatoes, parsnip, pretty much every root vegetable that you can find. Looks unreal, I can't wait to eat it. Tastes unreal. So just to give you a bit of a rundown on how today went. So I came out here, as I said, the plan was straight away get something cooking, set up my tent, then go for a gold pan. Everything there just took a long time. Camera died halfway through filming, putting up the tent, so hopefully you get a good sort of view of how that happened once I get back to editing. But getting the fire started probably took me an hour longer than I hoped. I've been practicing going with my flint and steel for a couple of weeks now, trying to figure out how to get the right amount of spark. I don't know if everything's just too wet at the moment, if it's a skill thing, or if I'm just picking the wrong items, but I couldn't even get a tissue lit. Probably back to the drawing board, do a little bit more practice with that and sort of see how I go. After that, went down, did a bit of gold panning and managed to find 3 little specks. That being said, going with a little shovel, wasn't going full ham with it, just going there, have a quick poke around and see whether or not I can find something. See how it go tomorrow, getting everything packed up. If I'm packed up early enough, I might get a chance to go back down there before I have to head home. So someone I mentioned before was Ben Hall. He was one of the bushrangers that was known to frequent this area from Bathurst to Forbes. and him and his gang have one of Australia's most famous bushranger robberies. So what it was known as was the Eugowra Gold Escort robbery. This robbery was well planned and probably one of the biggest heists of gold at the time. So 1862, gold was booming in Australia. It was well known that there was an established route that the gold would move from Forbes, get taken in carriage and get moved to Bathurst, where it'd get exchanged into notes and then taken to Sydney. So this was part of the plan. They knew the route, everybody else knew the route. There was a perfect section for them to stage the robbery. Hall was actually recruited by Frank Gardner. So Gardner was the head of this particular robbery. He recruited a number of other bushrangers. The plan was to ambush the convoy as it went through a narrow bit of road called Escort Rock. So what the group did here was they actually blocked the road completely, meaning that the escort would have to get out. As the escort approached, the driver got out and began removing that block. That's when the ambush began. When the escorts got out to move this blockade, that's when the bushrangers opened fire. In the panic, the horses spooked and they actually flipped the carriage over. Due to coming under heavy gunfire, the police escort pushed back and fled from the scene. In today's price, it would be worth millions of dollars. Now, it's not completely over here, so the gang started getting away, but the one drama is gold itself is incredibly heavy. So the gang had to start dumping some of the gold as the rest of the convoy was on their tail. Now, this is where a bit of history, a bit of legend and a bit of myth might come into it. So the law is, throughout this area, there's caves that are actually loaded up with the gold that was stolen on that day. The gold itself was never recovered. So after this, Ben Hall continued the bushranger lifestyle, but it would come to an end. Now there's some controversy about the way that came to an end, and I'll tell you about that shortly. So just going to go for a walk over here. I was just having a cruise along the bank and checking out what I could see, and had something growling at me from across the river, so I'll come see whether or not you guys can hear it as well. So something just across here. No better time than to watch an outdoor survival video.
I think I'm peeking! What is that? Is that two spacemen over there?
So back to Hall and his gang. So by 1865, the Australian government had grown sick of these bank robberies that were continually occurring. Hall and his gang had gone into the hundreds of robberies, taking out numerous coaches and having one of the biggest gold hauls in Australian history. So the Australian government rushed through the Felons Apprehension Act, which allowed bushrangers to be shot on sight without any trial. But this is where something happened. Before the act had officially come into place, police received information on where Hall was. Acting on that tip, they surrounded a place on the 5th of May 1865 in Goobang Creek. As the sun rose, police called Hall out. Rather than come out with his hands up, decided to flee. It's here where the police shot him on sight. Now, that act hadn't actually been enacted yet. It was getting pushed through the government and the levels of government. So the police had acted and shot Hall. So many actually believe that this was an unlawful execution of Hall and that the police were in the wrong here. What do you guys think? So it's starting to get cold. I've just taken the fire, moved it over to where I'm sleeping for the night. So I've got it set up over here now. You can see I've got my sleeping bag there and I've got the fire set up over there. Fingers crossed none of the embers spark and hit my mattress, because that would be very bad. Should hopefully keep me a little bit warmer tonight. It's pretty cool setup. I'm hoping that I stay dry. There's no clouds in the sky, so should be pretty good. But that's me for the night, guys. Thanks. So just got up for the morning, started to pull the tent down. Pretty cold throughout the night. Nothing crazy cold, but just enough to be a little bit uncomfortable. End up getting down to -1. Sleep system end up doing all right. So what I had the Alton mat underneath, had my Cedar Summit mat, then an Alton sheet on top, and then just sleeping bag there. Wasn't terrible, but could have definitely been a lot warmer. Probably could have pitched the tarp in an A-frame. It would have made it a little bit warmer for me, but I wanted to try that lean-to and see how it went with the fire at the front. It was nice while the fire was burning, but the fire ended up stopping about midnight. Woke up this morning, I just found some hot coals in there and managed to get it going again, so hopefully be able to warm the fingers and toes up. No bushrangers throughout the night, but definitely heard a few spooky noises up that way. Could hear throughout the night heaps of grunting and growling. I think I shone a torch up here and was able to see some blue eyes looking back at me, and they disappeared after I shone the torch on them. So thinking that it might have been a possum or possibly a koala. But then also throughout the night I would hear, well, that's it from me here, guys. Had a really good time. First time doing a camp under the hoochie in negative weather, so ended up getting down to -1 last night. Managed to survive the night and keep all my fingers and toes, which was good. Thank you for coming along for this trip. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked, I've got more videos here that I think you will enjoy.